Shopping centres are a fundamental part of our Australian suburban identity. There are thousands of them dotted across our cities, built since the 1950s when the first centralised shopping precincts started appearing. This was because of the car-based urban planning that really started to take off after the Second World War, and we've talked about before in some previous videos. Unfortunately, most of these shopping centres have been renovated, removing almost any traces of their original design or character. And this to me is why they're so important to us as a vital historical reminder of our city's development and our past memories. So join me today as we go looking at 5 retro, unrenovated shopping centres across Melbourne. Before we start, a quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't already, so that you can stay up to date on new videos about Melbourne and Victoria, and continue to support this channel. Let's kick off this list with the Mall, or Mall as it's sometimes called by locals, which is a short section of pedestrianised street with 2 rectangular blocks of shops just off Bell Street near Oriole Road in West Heidelberg. While it's seen some small changes since it was built in 1956 as Melbourne's very first car-oriented shopping centre, it's pretty well intact as you can see. This was the same year that Melbourne hosted the Summer Olympic Games, and at the time there was rapid expansion of housing in this area, which is why the mall was built in the first place. I've previously covered the 1956 Olympic Village, which was built not very far from here and provides some more context. I've provided a link to the video up here in the top right hand corner if you're interested. There are quite a few shops here in the mall. They're concentrated around this main central pedestrian street with some corridors and lanes branching out. There's a local supermarket with some old signs, a post office, and a fantastic collection of mainly Somali and Ethiopian shops and restaurants. It's a reflection of the changing demographics of the area and has created this unique shopping area. Most of the buildings are more or less as they were many decades ago. The most obvious and my favourite part is the original advertising sign perched on what is today the chemist. It's unfortunately been graffitied in recent years, but it's still very visible if you stand in the right place. Of course, because this was built to emphasise people driving here, it's hard to see from ground level in the mall itself. So if you do want to see it, it's best viewed from Bell Street or Oriole Road nearby. Now let's move further east to our next centre. Mooroolbark Terrace is probably the saddest one on this list, but also one of the most intact. This mostly abandoned single-storey centre is just near Mooroolbark Station on Bryce Avenue. It seems like most of the original architecture and design from when it was built in 1982 is still here, and very little has changed. It's very eerie inside with most of the shops vacant and almost no one around. There are these ventilation pipes jutting out of the ceiling like some kind of giant octopus monster trying to escape, and there are hidden dark corners and an abandoned IGA supermarket, which was formerly a KFL. But by all accounts it wasn't always like this. When it opened, there were popular retail stores and services here like banks, clothes shops and food stalls, which are now almost entirely gone in favour of empty shop fronts. Apparently Woolworths have been trying to acquire the site to refurbish it and move in, but this hasn't happened for various reasons. Out the back is the huge car park, which is also almost entirely empty. There are some wonderful old signs around the side that are a parade of ghosts, shops that once loaded goods through here but have since left the scene. These include the Discount Wine Centre and the KFL supermarket. Today though, the terrace is slowly finding some new life. The cheap rents have resulted in some very niche businesses that might not otherwise survive to set up shop, including the famous Microbee computer store. It has also allowed community groups to use the space as a food bank and support centre. While I was there filming, I actually happened to run into some lovely people setting up some tables here near the old cafe. I had a chat with them, and it turned out they were part of a local charity called Ben's Place, which is a food bank run across Melbourne's outer eastern suburbs. I'll be donating 100% of ad revenue from this video to Ben's Place, and if you'd like to support them too, you can find information on their page which I've linked in the video description below. While some small specialty shops cling to life and the local community makes some great use of this wonderful time capsule, unfortunately I don't think Mooroolbark Terrace in its current state is very long of this earth. Another suburban centre, Lalor Plaza is the smallest on this list. Opened in 1979, this represents a slightly earlier era of shopping centre architecture than Mooroolbark. Today, the Coles supermarket is the largest single shop here, but it was originally a tucker bag, followed by a Franklin's and then a Bilo. Apparently, some of these shops that you can see are original from when the plaza opened over 40 years ago, and the owner of the sports shop is apparently an original tenant from when the centre first opened, which is very impressive. There are a lot of old signs around, like this directional information, a couple of old Coles signs scattered around the outside, and this very modified centre directory near the entrance to the main car park. The angular roof beams look kind of cool, and the tiles on the floor look original. There's also this slightly separated Eastern Court section, which has a surprising number of active shops given that it's a dead end. Its location is also worth pointing out. Because of the easement underneath the high voltage power lines next door, you're not allowed to build most types of structures underneath. This is why the car park and the grassy areas stretch out behind the plaza buildings, creating some nice vistas over the green and brown suburban landscape here that probably hasn't changed that much since Lalor Plaza came into being. Unfortunately, it has seen better days, especially since new, larger shopping centres have opened nearby in Epping and South Wurrung and drawn away trade. I feel like if the Coles here ever closed down, the centre would be in a lot of strife. Second to last on this list is what may be a surprising find right here in the heart of Melbourne CBD, the Paramount Centre. This is a huge multi-storey podium shopping centre at the base of a residential tower in between Burke and Little Burke Streets near Exhibition Street. Built in 1996 on the site of a car park and cinema, themselves built in place of a warehouse and theatre from 1907 and 1915 respectively, it is now a quintessential 1990s era shopping centre. It was developed by Multiplex and designed by Malaysian architect Chris Ng. These kinds of centres are quite special to me, as this was my childhood pretty much. Almost all of the other shopping centres built during this time have been renovated and stripped of their original features, like Eastland and most of Chadstone, which have lost most of their character now and just look like any other shopping centre. But fortunately, the Paramount Centre is a rare living exhibit of the 90s and postmodern architecture. The interior has been left almost entirely untouched, from these wonderful columns with long mirrors surrounded by beige and green facades, to the beautiful curved lights and multicoloured floor tiles that are a classic 1990s palette. The high typeface used in the name is also typical of this period, and you can still see this on the signs and centre directories. The entrance off Little Burke Street also deserves a special mention. You enter into a huge void with the red faux marble flooring on the stairs welcoming you inside. Looking up, you'll see the roof topped with a conical tower, like a smaller version of that on top of the Shot Tower at Melbourne Central. If you look closely, you'll see that some of the tiles are coloured with different symbols and signs. There does seem to have been a separate logo from when the centre was built too. I could only find this in a few places, with the largest and most obvious being this large tile in the centre of the food court at the bottom of the stairs. Although, if you look closely at the chairs in the food court, you'll see that most of them actually have the logo engraved in the backrest. I could go on for ages about this place, but one final thing that I want to point out is these tiny escalators. I loved these as a kid, and while the ones in the Como Centre in South Yarra were and are still my absolute favourites, the ones in the Paramount Centre are similarly narrow, although not quite as short. The good news is that unlike some other shopping centres on this list, it's recently become popular again. The large food court is now well known for having some great shops from many different cuisines, including Sri Lankan, Korean and Thai. It's now pretty busy, especially on weekdays at lunchtime. There are other levels though, and many shops are still vacant. Although I did notice that more seem to be used, and the centre feels a bit more alive every time I go back. The last one for today is another The Mall, but this time in the eastern suburb of Boronia. If I had to pick, this takes out number one on the list, purely because of its scale and the extent to which it's been left alone by time. It's also a bit more alive than some others we've seen, like the ghost town in Mooroolbark. Opened on the 10th of September 1973 by Premier Rupert Hamer to great fanfare, it was originally called Boronia Shoppingtown and planned to be a lot larger than it actually was. Still, it hosted a Kmart and a venture shop as anchor tenants. The Kmart is still here today, although only with an entrance leading to the car park rather than through the mall. The centre was sold to new owners in 1988 after being renovated in 1986. At its time of sale, it hosted the Kmart, a Coles, a Fossey's, 34 specialty shops and 3 kiosks. It was also advertised with parking for 869 cars. It has since become such an important icon of the local area that it's held a big festival to celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2023, which by all accounts was well attended. Home to Australia's only remaining rotating stage, it's still used to host events and performances. As for the decor, there is no way that anyone can come here and not be impressed. Everything from the drab and semi-brutalist exterior to the various shades of brown and beige covering everything inside, it's a classic look that I don't think you can find anywhere else in Melbourne to this extent. The carpet, the balustrades, gardens and benches are all original and look fantastic. I have to say that as a whole, the centre is immaculately maintained. It's very clean and there seems to be a real effort to keep and celebrate the look and feel of this place from both the shopkeepers and centre management. One of my favourites is this sign above the cafe on the second floor, advertising the new Boronia Mall cafe. There's also a large mural on the wall at the east end of the building that has the original Boronia Shoppingtown logo to the right if you look closely. If you're interested in seeing more of Boronia Mall, the Stormo Films channel has a great video going into more detail that I've linked in the description below. I've also linked to other interesting videos as well, together with some more footage of the interior and my own walkthrough. So there you have it, 5 retro shopping centres left in Melbourne. As I mentioned before, this is far from a full list. These are just some of my favourites. I've posted links to some bonus unlisted videos below with walkthroughs from some of my visits, so please check them out if you're interested. One final thing that I'd like to say is that for all of these centres, apart from the Bell Street Mall and Mooroolbark Terrace, they all had background music playing from the period in which they were built, which really added to the atmosphere and the experience. I'm very pleased to see, based on this and other things, that these places are celebrating what makes them special and recognising their historical significance and the importance of people's memories, rather than just stripping it all out and converting it into yet another generic modern shopping precinct. If you have any memories of these places or suggestions for others to visit, please let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Every little bit helps me share lesser known stories and topics like these about Melbourne and Victoria. And make sure you check out the supporters portal if you haven't already at members.philipmallis.com. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.